Welcome to your Next Stop podcast. Welcome back to your Next Stop. This is Juliette Hahn, and I say it every single time, but I might even mean it a little bit more with this guest. So I'm going to welcome Nikayla Russell, maiden name Mendoza. How are you, Nikki?
I am doing so well. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so we got to get a little background on this because as anyone that's watching on YouTube, they can see my stupid smile right now because or my silly smile, I should say. I am so excited. But first, I want people to be able to find you. So you can find, really, you hung out on Instagram the most, and that's Doza Yoga, and that's Doza. And then your personal is Nikayla Russell, right? Or what is your personal?
Yeah, it's at
that's your personal Instagram.
Yes, Nikayla Russell, Nikayla Russell.
Perfect. And so that's where you can find Nikki the most. I have known. I mean, really, when we kind of went back. I mean, we're going to talk about that like last encounter where now I'm like an obsessed yogi, and my listeners know like this has like changed so much. I mean, I've always had good paths. I've always had, I have to say like, I've been very blessed in my life, but this was yoga and your studio, and you came back into my life at such a pivotal moment of so many things that it was such a beautiful thing. So, but we're going to get into that. So I would love what my listeners know. We always kind of start with a little bit of background where you grew up and a little bit of kind of your childhood, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So I grew up in West Hampton Beach, which is where the studio is located. Went to elementary, middle, and high school in this town. And I worked in town for as soon as I can work up until very recently. And that's how you and I first connected when I was like a little middle schooler probably or something. Through my mom. And then we went years without ever being in touch, or you guys, I guess, were part-time at that point too. And then, what was it, like a year ago? Is it a year ago now?
It's a year ago. It is. I want to say I started in the spring right around this time. I actually had one of the girls, I was like, can you look back? Karen and I both had it. Was like, when did I start? And I was like, wait, I feel like I started April. Like, well, I actually know I started like April, May. And maybe I had done one in March or something, right around this time. Mm-hmm. And just a little background. So Nikki, you babysat the kids in the summer because your mom was is an occupational therapist. Wonderful. And when we were going through, my listeners know about Montgomery's dyslexia and my dyslexia. So we were going through kind of the early, it was actually before he was diagnosed. And so we became friendly with your family. And I just remember the love and everything I had for you guys. And then over the years, as you said, in the summers, I would see you working at a shop and you'd be like, Juliette, and you always were like Juliette. And now you were growing and I would look at you and you'd be like, Nikki. And I'd be like, oh my God, you say Tina Mendoza's daughter. And I'd be like, oh my God, right. I'm so sorry. Yes. And so that's really how we kind of stayed in touch. And then I started going through some hormone stuff. I always have been a big avid workout person, but I always would do like the hard, heavy stuff. I loved like the jumping and the heavy weights. And I started going through some hormone stuff and I was like, all right, everyone's been telling me how to try hot yoga. I'm going to go to that local studio that I heard just opened up, because you guys were around, 8 months then?
Yeah, I opened
was it a year?
July 4th, 2022. So I guess whatever that is, 8 months-ish. This time last year that we had been open.
Yeah. And so I was going through like this, I was starting the dyslexia podcast. I was really actually in the process of being like, should I be starting this dyslexia podcast with the co-host that I have, Brent Sopel? And I was like, okay, what does this look like? I need some signs. And it was I was maybe only doing yoga for, I don't even think it was a month. I think it was actually my first or second class. Because you were there, I think, right?
Yeah. It was.
I think it was like my first.
Yeah. I don't know if I taught it, but I saw you and you were like, Oh my gosh, it's you.
I started crying. Well, I was literally praying, and in yoga, I was like, I just need a sign to know that this next endeavor that I'm taking on is really what I need. This is what I, what I do, what I need in my life, but also I don't want to put expectations. And I was really in like this kind of crazy spot in my life hormonally, but then also with my business and like where I wanted to be. And I said, I need a sign. I really need one. I think I'm good. And I walked out and I saw you and I go, wait, why do I know you? And you go, it's Nikki, Tina Mendoza's daughter. And I went, oh my God. And then I started crying. And I was like, I'm so sorry. You're like, you're okay. And I was like, no, I don't think you understand. But I was like, I don't think you understand the impact right now that this is happening. And it's so wild to me that this is like my sign. I mean, dyslexia, this is where Montgomery had his start. I loved you guys. And I told you, and I kind of shared with you, and you're like, oh my gosh. And then as the year went on, I mean, I think there was a time where I was coming like 9 times a week. I think I was doing like doubles. I did, but the space that you created at Doza, I mean, not only your classes, but the other instructors you have, the people that would come, it just like, I like walked in and I would be like, I love the smell. I love the feel, like everything about the place that you created was so special. And from that day, I've been saying to you, we need to have you on the podcast. And then I had, some ideas that I wanted to do this series, and it, both of our lives, as we're going to get into you opening the new studio and stuff kind of happened. But it was just this most beautiful message that the universe, God, like slammed me with. I mean, it was really like a smack in the back of the head. And I was like, okay, I hear you. Okay, I know I'm on the right path. This is crazy. And then as I grew in your space and then saying to you, I mean, there were some days that I would come out and I would say, I like found myself even more. And I didn't know that was possible. I thought I was in a pretty good space. Like I thought I was a pretty like, put together human. And there was times where I was just in awe of all of this. So I want to get into how you created this space and how you got into yoga and what that path is.
Yeah, absolutely. To start with, going off of what you said, one of the things that continues to humble me in all different stages of life through this practice is that yoga is something that continuously reintroduces yourself to yourself over and over and over again. It is a never-ending journey of learning and reflecting and epiphanies and just going inward that is so unlike any other form of practice or even just exercise that I have ever experienced. So to get into it, I started, growing up, I had taken yoga classes here and there. My mom would play like little VHS kids yoga things for us. As we were growing up, I grew up dancing. I played sports. So I was always a mover. But then, I went to college and a lot of that just kind of got put to the side and didn't really have any form of routine in a movement sense. And then there was one point in my freshman year of college, I had been going through a breakup and I kind of had a change of plans with my holidays. And I went with my roommate to spend Easter with her family rather than going home. So it was kind of like a last minute switch up. And while I was with her family, we went to a hot yoga class. So I didn't really think much of it. I was like, okay, yoga, I've done this before. Sounds good. I had no idea what I was walking into, or at least I thought I knew what I was walking into. And it was something completely different with the heat and all of the added elements that brings in. And I went through all the same, ideas and going through my head of like, is everyone else sweating like this? Am I the only one who's like struggling right now? Like, what is going on? Is this the normal way that I should be feeling? But I got through it. It was a good class, enjoyed the movement. And then it came time for Shavasana, which at that time I had no idea what Shavasana was. I was like, okay, cool. We get to lay down. And during that, I was able to just sit with myself for probably the first time ever in my life, truly, like with intention, and
Mm-hmm.
I had tears flowing from my eyes, and I couldn't pinpoint it to a thought, a feeling, a memory. I was like, it wasn't like I'm not sad, I'm not happy, I don't know where these tears are coming from, but something is coming out of me and I don't know why. And I didn't really think much of it at the time. I move on with life. And I continued with school. I never went back to a class after that for a while. I just kind of thought it was a fluke of like, whoa, that was a crazy experience, but that can't be what it's always like every time. I don't know what that was. Maybe it was because I was going through a breakup. I didn't know where to place it
Mm-hmm.
in my life because I had never experienced something like that before. Fast forward, I studied abroad in Australia, partied, lived it up, drank, ate, all the things. And I came home and I was like, okay, time to get back on track. I was ready to like start a fitness journey again, started working out at the gym, doing all the things that you think you're supposed to do to get into shape and feeling good. So I did that for probably a solid 6 to 8 months with really not feeling much of a difference in my body and in my mindset. There was results seeing that I was seeing, but it wasn't like anything significant where I was kind of getting frustrated and wondering why this isn't progressing the way I wanted to in my fitness journey. And I noticed that every time I would go to the gym, I would put on so many layers because I felt like all I need to do is just sweat. I just need to release some of this out of me. So I'd wear like leggings and sweatpants and a long sleeve Under Armour and then a sweatshirt on top of it. And then I had this like clicking moment. I was stretching in the mirror and I was looking at myself and thinking, I feel like I'm misaligned or my stretching is off. And I used to be good at this. I know how to stretch. I was a dancer and all of these things are going through my head. And I was kind of like, what's missing here? And so I was like, oh, let me try going to a hot yoga class. I remember that one time in my freshman year, I got so much out of it and I sweat unlike any other time before. And I stretched and I felt physically like worked. And so I researched, looked up a hot yoga place near me, went to a class, and I was like, okay, this is something here. And similar to your experience, it was kind of like it was like a sense of knowing came over me. And it was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I was hooked immediately. That pouring of energy and feeling your body be so present in movement, especially as someone who had a ADHD diagnosis growing up and had a lot of the monkey mind in just life. It really brought me to being present with just my mind, my body, and my breath for that 1 hour. Because with the heat, there's really no mental capacity to be doing anything else other than breathing and getting through the class, following along, and just being present in that sense. So I started to practice very consistently, took as many classes as I could. Never in my life have I prioritized something in the way that I prioritized that. I was always someone who had slept in and waited till the very last minute to get ready for work and to get out the door. And I was waking up at 5 a.m. to get to the 5:30 class so that I could get my class in before I went into work. And that was something completely new for me. That it was just crazy how it became such a priority that I need to fit this in my day. And if I don't, I will just it'll feel missing if I don't get that in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's happens a lot in the beginning too, where you're like, this is everything. I have to do this every single day. And if I don't, I'm not going to feel good, because that's how our mindset works. It's like all or nothing. Over time, I've given myself some grace in that and taken classes as it feels good for me. But that's basically how I really got into it. And with that, I saw my body completely transform. I was in better shape than I had been in my whole entire life. My eating habits changed. I became a lot more mindful of just how I operated within the world, how I presented myself, how my energy was being experienced by other people. And I remember it so distinctly when I first really got into the practice, maybe a few months in. I was driving home and it was like all of my senses were completely heightened. And it was like I could see the colors of the trees and the color of the sky and smell the flowers as I was driving in my ride home and taste the coffee that I had drank in my mouth so much more vividly. Like everything was amplified after having that hour of presence and just being able to experience that it was like, again, reintroducing myself to the world of, wow, this is how you can experience life. It doesn't have to be so on to the next thing, not even being where you're at in that moment. And that really just changed my life in tenfold, in so many other ways, in my relationships, with myself, with my body, in tons of different ways. So that's how it became
I love that
in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's a couple of things I got totally, when you were saying about laying there, I got totally welled up because that's exactly what I felt. I mean, and I've had it in my, obviously, being ADHD and dyslexic, all those different things. I always have been just someone that goes, right? That's just my personality. I'm high energy. I go. And I have, when I talk about it a lot, when I walk my dogs is like really my peaceful time. I really connect and I do all these things. And so I have that space and I've always had that space. I've always known that's like my time. It's good. I can be in my head and do whatever. And so that has always been my space. I think as I've gotten older, I needed something else. So I remember for the first time doing that. And I had done yoga probably 5 or 6 years ago, and maybe a stint for a couple months. And it was good, but it wasn't the time. Finding you in your studio again, that was my time. But I remember that first time laying down and literally being like, oh, I have nothing in my mind. And that was one of my like favorite questions I would ask people. Like, I remember my husband and I one time before we got married, and I was not someone that's like, oh, what's in your mind? But it was one of these points where it was like we were on our first vacation. It was when we were dating. And I remember looking at him and just being like so happy that we were together and me thinking like the warmth and all of this. And I was like, I never asked you this, but like, what are you thinking? And he said nothing. And I go, what? I go, that's not possible. Right. Because it's possible. And I go, no, there's no way you cannot be thinking anything. You might be thinking insignificant things like, oh, the sun feels really good. Oh, look at that bird. Oh, the sand looks really interesting. Look at the water. And he looked at me and he goes, no, I don't do that. And I went, what do you mean you don't do that? I go, who doesn't do that? Which led to me calling my brother, calling my best friend. I mean, like, can you ever, like, it was so bizarre to me that someone could not have a thought. It didn't mean that you had to have an anxious thought or you were thinking like, it could just be insignificant things. My brain really never has no thoughts. I am always thinking. And so one of the times is like on a boat, I can get some where for a very short time, but in yoga, I have learned that I am present. I am there. I'm thinking about the movements. I'm thinking of my breath. And you taught me that. I mean, really, really well. It was like, I don't have to be thinking what I'm doing next. And there's times where my life is really busy and I have to stop and be like, pause, go back to your breath. And that's something that you have really, I mean, in your classes, that's one of the reasons why I love your classes so much, particularly is because I know that you know how to talk to some minds. You talk to all minds, but like the way your mind talks is the way my mind needs to hear. So it's been really helpful for me to be like, okay. And that I have an hour sometimes of where I'm just thinking of my breath and thinking of what I'm doing. And that is bizarre to me until it's now all the time. So I got so welled up because that was really like my first experience in your studio was that, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Now I've gone through where it's been harder at times where then I'm challenged back to be like, stop. Like, yes, you have so much going on in your life, but you got to get back to that first, that first class. I remember one of the times we laid on our side. What is that position called?
Garbhasana. like the fetal position.
Yes.
Yeah.
The fetal position. And you said, relax your eyes. And I remember I was like, oh, I'm not relaxing my eyes. And I remember my eyes literally feeling like they were going to fall out of the socket. And it was the best feeling I've ever felt. I was like, oh my God, this feels so good. This is ridiculous. This feels so good. I didn't even realize I was stressing in my eyes, right? I didn't even think, oh, I have tension in my eyes, but that is like your whole face. And it was that first bunch of months. That's what I was feeling every time. And that's why, all or nothing, I was like, oh, I got to do this like constantly. Now I'm in a stage of my life where I know if I do it 3 or 4 days, I'm okay. I'm still good. I need to do it every other day. I've gone through where it's like, no, I need to do it 3 days in a row, or the next 2 I don't. No, I need to do it every other day. And when I don't, I do. And even my husband and my kids can feel like I'm going to be traveling next week and a half. I know, I take a breath because I know that it's an adjustment for me. And when I come back, I'm so excited to get back to the studio. I've been working out my whole life, right? I was an athlete, a college athlete. You work out because of things that you said, to get your body fit, to get your mind fit, to do all these different things. I can't say that I've ever been like, oh, I'm so excited to go lift weights and work out. It's not like I do it out of necessity because I know that's what my body needs. I look forward to going to yoga. I am excited to go to yoga. And it's such an incredible feeling to have that and to know that that's going to be my rest of my life.
Right. Yeah. It's such a beautiful thing to be able to share with people, and hearing your experience is so fulfilling for me, because that's exactly why I wanted to become a teacher, is because this was such a powerful, impactful development in my own life that I was like, I honestly, when I first started, I could not shut up about it. I was preaching to people about it. Whoever would listen, I was like, you have to try this thing, hot yoga. It's incredible. I promise you, you will get something out of it. And then that's kind of becomes a theme with people. Once they start to really get into it, you can't stop talking about it because it has such an impact in your own life that you just want everyone else to be able to experience it. And I think that's why we become kind of obsessed in the beginning, because it's like you're grasping for that feeling because it's so new and it feels so good. And then you start to take those lessons that you learn in the room outside of the room, and then you're able to kind of manage and control it a little bit better, which is also one of the incredible benefits of the practice, is that you can take it anywhere. It's not just physical of being in class, going through the movements. There's so much more that comes with it that you are able to access out in the real world, like your breath and being able to notice what's going on internally, and like, ooh, I was really impulsive in that moment. Let me just take a minute and maybe, why was I like that? Why did I react that way? Or why did I snap at that person? Or why did I take that so offensively? Whatever it is. And you kind of have that awareness. Now, once you start to feel it in the room and in your body, you can recognize those same sensations outside. So then we kind of calm down and we're like, okay, let's regulate a little bit here. I don't need to go, to every single class that's listed on the schedule. I can go 3 or 4 times a week when it fits in. But that's also some of a beautiful thing about yoga, is that, like you said, lifting weights, strength training, all of that is good. And you need some of that to balance, all the stretching and lengthening as well. But I always say yoga is like the long game. The lifting the weights, the strength training, that's kind of the short game, where it's like you're looking for results, you see the results, you get them, great, we move on. Yoga is the long stretch. You do it from when you're in the womb, and you can do it until the day you die. And that's what the practice is. That's what the journey is. We start in a fetal position in that pose Garbhasana, which is our, birthing position. And we end in Shavasana, which is corpse pose, which is the death. So it's like, that is what is reflected in every single class. And it goes through the cycle of life. There's the ebb and the flow, the things that are more challenging, the things that come more naturally. And we experience all of that in the class setting, so that when we're experiencing it in the outside world or just outside of the studio, we're able to navigate through those emotions, feelings, sensations whatever it is that we're going through. So
Yeah.
it really touches people in a very special and personal way that they're able to leave with whatever it is that they were able to take from it. Like that day for you, it was the resting of the eyes. Sometimes it's the clenching of the jaw. Sometimes it's the release of the shoulder. Sometimes it's finding a new core engagement that they've never felt before and they feel really empowered in that. Whatever it is, maybe it's a quote that was said or the way something was explained that really clicked for them. There's so many different ways that it can click for people. And just being able to share that with so many in my hometown is like a dream come true.
Yes. Oh, so that's what I want to get to. When did you decide, okay, I want to open Doza. I want to do this. I mean, cause you're young. I mean, you're really young.
28.
How old are you? Sorry. Yeah, so I knew you were in your 20s. Yeah. And so for you to grasp this, I mean, that's what I love also about you, and your family. You guys you're action people, right? You're not going to sit on an idea. It's like, I have this idea. I'm now going to like do something. And so that's like my kind of people, right? Those are the kind of people I love that energy around. But so when you decide, like we're thinking about it, from start to finish, how did that look? So you can kind of take the listeners through, especially a listener that's sitting there going, I always had a dream to do something. I've always had a dream to open something up, to start my own business. What kind of advice and with your story can you share?
Yeah, absolutely. So my journey is kind of interesting and a lot of things make sense as I've reflected. And as I explain this to other people, it's like, it clicks for me as I say it out loud. But I originally went to school, to college for broadcast journalism. That was my major. I loved it in high school. I had an incredible teacher, and my teacher's husband is Sean Met, who owns Island Surf, which is in West Hampton Beach. He was my boss that I worked for 10 years. So between the two of them, they were big inspirations in my life of just like where I wanted to see my life go, who I was surrounding myself with. And so I followed sort of in their footsteps in certain ways. So I originally went to school to be a broadcast journalist, and I loved the idea of entertainment and being a face of something and talking with people, connecting with people, similar to you. And that was like where I had my sights were set. My dream at the time was to like be a talk show host or something of the sort.
That was me too. Yeah.
Yeah. As I went through school, things, shifted, and I learned the reality of what that is and what that looks like. At that same time, like I said, my freshman year of college is when I took that first yoga class. Then I studied abroad. When I studied abroad in Australia, that major didn't directly transfer. So then it was into media. When I came home from Australia, I ended up going to community college for a little bit. And then I started getting into a lot more of the business side of things. And that's when I really started focusing and being interested to learn how things operated, like the reality of owning a business and what does that look like and what goes into it. So my major at community college changed to business, which from there, this is like a little tangent, but my business law professor is now my father-in-law. I met his son who ended up being my husband. And so I kind of just started to shift in that business direction. And my boss at the surf shop really kind of took me under his wing and started saying like, let me show you like how I work this out, or how this ordering of this product goes and where my finances lie and how we budget this and, things like that. From there, I went to FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology. My major there was international trade and marketing for the fashion industry, and my minor was design thinking. So that gave me the marketing business side of things in my major, and my minor was more so to break it down in a more not so theoretical sense of design thinking. It was kind of more so like, as a business person, how do you work with creatives to execute their ideas? So I want to write a book. Great. That's a beautiful idea. How do you actually make that happen? The step-by-step process. I want to open a boutique. Who do you need to recruit to open that boutique, and what goes into that? So that was where a lot of my training for actually executing this vision that I had came from. And as my ideas started to change and my goals started to change, I had always had, or I should say, it started to develop into, I want to open up a business. I'm not sure what direction I want to take that. Like, what's going to be my niche? I don't want to just do a boutique necessarily. What's going to differentiate me from other places that are successful? And then that's when, at the same time, I had really started my yoga practice consistently. So when I had those moments of being like, I just need to share this with people, I was selling it for the business that had existed that I was going to. So it was kind of starting to click with me of, I think I can do this. And this is where my passion is so strong right now, more than I've felt it in any other area of life. I feel so passionate about this subject and feel the need to share it with people, like desperately. And so how can I make that happen? So in the back of my mind, that was always living there, like yoga studio, yoga studio, yoga studio. And so I put myself in positions to work in yoga studios. So I did that. I got my yoga teaching certification right when I graduated college. That I went from graduation basically straight into yoga teacher training. That was like check one, check the box, step completed. And that was also a beautiful journey of, learning more about what goes into it, what being a teacher is, the philosophy behind why we're doing what we're doing, why these poses are called what they are, the sequence of why we teach the way we teach. And that was a huge, wisdom bomb for me. I was really interested in all of that. And then, I just kind of worked here and there. I started teaching at studios, at gyms, trying to just get some practicing experience under my belt of teaching. And then COVID hit. So when COVID hit, I kind of moved from our little apartment that we were living in back to the suburbs of West Hampton area, Eastern Long Island. And I started working at a studio that I had been consistently practicing at for a few years before I was in college and stuff, which was like my home studio for a while. And I ended up managing that studio, which was the best experience I could have ever had to prepare me to do this one day. I really kind of took the ropes of the place and did scheduling and saw exactly what goes into building out a yoga studio. Like I said, this is also during COVID. So there was a lot of navigating that had to be done of how to make this work in a weird situation, and what that looks like, the logistics of it, of literally, okay, the heating aspect of it, the humidity aspect of it, the working with other instructors and how different personalities come into play with operating a studio, especially because yoga is such a personal thing that people hold so dearly. There's a lot that can go into how people teach and how they like to present those ideas. And it's not just like hiring an employee. It's more than that, for sure. So all of these things I learned. And then with help from my community of people that I grew up with, my boss from Island Surf, my in-laws, my parents, everyone kind of just knowing that I had this vision and dream to one day open up a yoga studio. And I wanted it to be in West Hampton, which is where my people are and where I felt like I had a good understanding of the clientele, what to expect seasonally. And it just would have been such a special full circle moment for me after having grown up and worked in this area my whole life to be able to give back to the community in that way and just kind of plant my roots here. So over about a year of looking for different locations, we found a spot. This was after like 4 other places that had kind of fallen through for different reasons. There is a spot that became available that was doable, and we were able to make it work for the price and the space. And it was in a great location to start small and see how it went. Just kind of take the risk of, all right, let's see how this goes. I've never done this before, but let's try it. And I used a lot of my old projects actually from my minor to plan out, make my business plan, which is kind of a really cool thing too. I was like, oh, my degree is actually coming in handy here.
Yeah.
And I basically just had a business plans already written out, and I kind of just plugged in the information of what I had envisioned for what my space would be, from the coloring of the space to logo designs to different fonts to vocabulary that would be used to explain the descriptions of the classes, and really just kind of laid all of that out so that I could present it to the people who were helping me find and curate the space, basically. So once we found our location, it was kind of like full gung-ho, like, let's do this thing. We got it all set up. I ended my job at the yoga studio I had been teaching at in June. It was like June 8th that I stopped there, and I opened by July 4th. We did basically everything in 1 month. And by then it was peak season in this town, and it was like full throttle. You're in it. So
yeah. Yeah, I love it. And the thing that is, it's really also special is, as you said, you went in it, but you had a lot of the training, a lot of the kind of forethought of what it's going to take. But one of the things that people might not understand if they're not from around this community, and I was a summer person and now I'm a full time, but it's a different clientele, and so you have to kind of be like, okay, I have to have the mindset of when the summer people come in, and they are people that want things now, right? Like it's a beach community, but it's a New York City beach community more. Let's just say that. So there's the intensity of that. And then you have the locals, which are actually very different. And so a lot of locals have lived their whole lives here. So when we first moved full time, people would be like, well, you're still a summer person. I was like, no, we've had those for over 21 years, whatever. No, we are here, but it's an interesting thing to think about that, because it is important. And one of the things that I'm like, have been so impressed by you, I didn't realize that the studio had just opened, right? Because it was like, I found yoga at the same sort of time as, you have been 8 months in, but it was the way you run it is you're always so calm. I mean, again, that's a yoga thing, but sometimes, there's a lot of people trying to get in. People, don't always come in with a yoga mindset. They come in with more of like, I want this kind of mindset. And you just do it so beautifully, the way you navigate the personalities. And if there's any, ever, I don't think I've ever really been in the studio where anything has been off, if that makes sense. Like, so even if things are like running behind the scenes, like, oh, this is a little intense or whatever, like it never is given to the people that are coming in. And even people that know you and close friends, like, it's always so professionally, beautifully, but cozy and homey. Like that is like the feel, like it's so professional, but then so real and cozy. Like it's almost like two words that don't go together, right? It's like you either have the business or you have the cozy, and you can't really have them together, but you do it so absolutely beautifully. And I love that you had the people rallying around you to be able to help you kind of see that vision, because it really is beautiful. And then going from the studio that you had to then the bigger studio. I mean, take us where it was like, okay, we know we have to do this. And Doza was really the only studio in town, which, right? I mean, I'm correct on that. There was other studios in other towns, but not one in West Hampton. And so that was also why I found you guys, because I was like, I want something convenient. Like I'm such a convenient person that like, I want to be able to go and, oh, I saw this, I saw that there was a yoga studio when I was, walking or doing something. And so it really was such a great location to grow, because people just happen to happen upon the studio.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for saying all of that, by the way.
Of course.
And that's exactly how I want it to come across and feel for people, because yoga is so personal. I've walked into a lot of different places where I feel judged or intimidated, or it feels cliquey, or it doesn't have that sense of warmth and a bringing in and welcoming. And I think that's so important, because what we do in there is vulnerable. It is intense. It is personal. People go through such a wave of emotions. A lot can come up when you're in your practice, and just having a place that feels safe in that way was always incredibly important to me. And then also having other instructors who believe in those same values and provide that experience as well in their own unique way was something that was non-negotiable. So to hear that that's how it feels, incredible.
No. And I mean, again, we haven't talked like what your vision was. And it literally, I mean, that's how I feel every single time I go in. And even with the new space, like one of the things about the old space, I loved like the sage, the smell of just like the yoga. And you still have that as you're growing the new studio, which is a lot bigger. I mean, you're going to be able to have the growth because you grew so fast, because you created that, again, I think yoga and really any business, if you go in and you don't have the best experience, a lot of times you're not going to get that repeat customer. Maybe someone will be like, okay, I'll give them another try, but usually, you might not. And so that's why you grew as fast as you grew, because people time and time again, I mean, I'm trying to think of how many people in my circle, because of course, when I started, then they're like, well, what the hell are you doing? Why? I just see some Zen and like, what's happening with your body? What the fuck are you doing? I was like, oh, I haven't told you I found hot yoga. Where are you going? Dozen. And then I would tell them the experience. I walked in, I needed to sign. And then I see beautiful Nikki. And it was like this crazy, so I had a number of people that were like, oh, well, I want that. Like I'm coming and I want that now have kind of done that. I've had friends that it's not their time for yoga yet, right? They've maybe come in and been like, okay, it's not my time. I see why you love it. It's a great space. But the other thing that I love about the community that you have created is people can stay and talk and chat, or you can be in business mode. I'm going to go lay. No one's going to talk to you. I'm going to go. And I am such a social person, but I am on a schedule when I'm doing my yoga. So I'm like I take my time. I usually come in a little early so I can have that like kind of quiet in the beginning. And then I know like the second class is over, I need to go out. But you also, even in the old studio that didn't have the space, the new studio with the space is just, it has to make you sit behind the desk and just smile, because you can see the people that also want to chat with their friends, and the people that maybe they met, maybe they weren't in their regular circle, because the group of people that are there are such. Also, I mean, I have not met one person that I really would be like, I mean, not that I really do that. I usually pretty much welcome most people, but interesting and like just kind. And like, it's even the people that are there, you want to stop and talk. And I usually will say, I can't today, maybe another class, but you want to sit. And that's what you've created even in the new space, because you saw the need from the old space. Okay, what do some of my clientele need? They really need this like gathering space. So 100%. For you to have that insight as well and do it is just, it just says who you are. I mean, it really does.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been really incredible to see the friendships that have blossomed just from seeing familiar faces in the studio. Like there are people who are all different ages, all different backgrounds who now hang out and they go to trivia every week together and after class. And it's like, that's their social hour when they come to the studio and they get to hang and chat and talk about whatever it is. That was never, there wasn't really a place for that other than, going to the bar or whatever it is around the area that you can do that. So it has become a big community feel. But to go back to how we got into this new space and everything, there was another studio in town when I first opened, but it was non-heated. And so there was a pocket in West Hampton Beach, like you said, from the other surrounding studios where there was not a hot yoga studio. So I was like, I got to do it before somebody else does. Yes. And so that's why I kind of had like a pep in my step to make it happen. And again, never in my life could I have predicted that I would open a studio at, I think I was 26 when I first opened it. And that was like I thought that would be 10 years later type of thing. But luckily, and with a lot of help, like I said, I was able to make it happen at that time, which was incredible.
It's your path.
It's the path. Yoga has taken me down this path and it's brought me beautiful things. So this is one of the many beautiful things. So the studio that we started out with, for context, was 750 square feet, which is small for a yoga studio. We could fit probably max 25 people tight. We fit a few more than that in the busy months, but it was barely functional. People rolled with it and were great. And our lobby area was like 8 by 14. It was very, very small. It was kind of just like, okay, I'm here. I'm going to just tuck my stuff right there and I'm going to scurry into the room. The bathroom was in the studio room. There was a lot of things that we kind of had to work around, and people luckily were very receptive of all of those kinks. But I think that the quality of class was worth kind of some 100%. Of the discomfort of those weird aspects of that space. So let's see, it was right around the end of the summer last year that I got notice that my building that I was in was being sold. So I was on a timeline of, okay, your lease is up May 14th. You are going to have to be out by then, and good luck. So I was like, okay, well, I just opened here, so let's start all over again. And it was crazy because the same week I found out I was pregnant. My due date was May 13th. And I also broke my foot in the same week. And I was like, whoa, life is happening. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of change that was in the forefront that I had to kind of prepare myself for. And I didn't even know where to begin. Moving into a bigger space was definitely something that was on my mind, just because of, like you said, how quickly we grew as a studio and the capacity needed to expand. We couldn't really hold the amount of people that wanted to come during those busy months. And like you had mentioned before, it's a very seasonal town. So the summer months are busy, 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 action. People are everywhere. And in the wintertime, it's much more mellow. It's just the local people. So there's a big fluctuation business-wise and just population-wise of how things go throughout the year. So being mindful of, okay, like there's a big drop-off in the off season, and there's a big influx during the summer season. So preparing, basically in the summer season, we could not accommodate everybody who wanted to be there. In the off season, it was great. Plenty of room. Still on the weekends, it would be packed sometimes, but totally manageable. So moving forward, I knew that this was something that was going to come eventually, where I would want to expand and, grow the business, be able to accommodate for more. But I was comfortable with where we were at for another year or two, so I could really hone in on how things are running and fine tune things, and keep it small so that I could have more room to grow. But this kind of put a pressure to figure it all out and do it fast. So another thing about this town is that it's very small. So there's only so many places that you can go. Luckily, this place that I'm currently in was available. It was actually a dance studio before it was a yoga studio. And it was a dance studio that I grew up coming to. It wasn't the same location, but it was the same company that had moved from the location I danced in growing up. And they had moved to this space. So it was, that alone was kind of like a, whoa, okay, another full circle moment living here. And I really wanted to stay in the Main Street area. That's like something that people really loved about the studio, is that they could have a whole experience of going to class, getting their smoothie, getting their coffee. So that was important. And basically this new space is 2,200 square feet. So it's triple the space that we're coming from. I was able to build out a beautiful lobby area that has couches and chairs and seating, a lot more space to have like Doza merch and retail. We're having a shower in this new space so people can shower after class. There's just a lot more potential to grow. We also are able to have a non-heated room now in this space, so we can tap into all different types of practitioners, which we weren't able to do before. A lot of people would never come to the studio because they would just, hot is not their thing. So now we are able to be accessible in that way for all different types of clients and practitioners, and different types of classes that we can offer. We offered some prenatal classes, some kids classes, meditations, just regular non-heated classes, and as well along with everything that we already were offering. So it's a big upgrade.
Yes, I'm excited.
A month before I give birth, which was a huge goal of mine.
Yes. And you were doing it. And I loved how you were sharing with us all that was happening through your social media. So again, you guys can go to Doza Yoga, and that's DOZA, and you can kind of catch as your baby girl comes into this world. I mean, even if you're not local, if like listening to the story, I know my listeners right now are just so happy because there's so much. Again, you're 28. We can all think back where we were when we were 28. I wasn't opening a business. Certainly not. I was drinking my face off. I think it was actually right around when Dan and I were getting married. So I was becoming a little bit more of an adult, but this was your path. And that's what I love, having a space that I can share people's paths. And you have always, it's crazy that you were in my life at a time where, I was having kids, my little, you babysat. And then now, you're bringing your baby girl into this world, but also you brought this studio that I will always, I can start crying. I mean, like, it has changed so much and has brought so much clarity, and just all the stuff that I'm doing in my life business wise, it's been able to help me get to that next level. And that's what's been like just so incredible. So I just, thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking that jump and doing it, because there's so many of us out there that have found your studio, and that's what it does for us.
Thank you so much. Seriously, like it warms my heart so much to hear that, because again, I know that feeling, and to be able to provide a space that allows other people to have that experience is more beyond anything I could have dreamed of. And we didn't even talk about how Montgomery worked at the studio last week.
I know. Well, I mean, you introduced
a special thing.
Yeah. Well, you introduced him to it, and I know that he'll always go back. I mean, he's now practicing again, because of his hips and stuff. And you were such a mentor to him in so many ways that it was like the relationship and friendship that you guys have will be a lifelong. There's times where in his life where I know he's spinning, that he's like, I know he's texting you, right? He's like, hey, how you doing? It's such a beautiful thing to be able to have that in a community, in a small community. But then, sharing it with the kids, my other two, they start and they're like, whatever, mom. But Montgomery, and they'll do it when they get older. It's not their time yet. And Montgomery even said, like, where he's going to college, that it's a very small town, but they have a yoga studio. And he's like, I know that I'll probably go there. And that's one of the things that I also want people to hear, because yoga is not, some people think of a yoga person, right? And they think of a yoga man. Like Montgomery is as teenage boy as man as you can get. Your husband who comes in and practices, like, it's not, over the years, it is more of like an athlete has taken to it, because it is so good for so much. And, I think that sometimes that stereotype that was back then was like, a yogi is just like, peaceful flower. And it's not, it's so many different things. So yes, the fact that you brought him in and really, uh, worked with him. We did less, because I was like, you got to do some privates with the boys because they're tight as hell. And they need to not have the issues that I've had older because I didn't have yoga. So yes, no, I love that, you and him have that relationship as well.
Yeah. I'm so grateful for that. And he was just someone again, like it was like came in at the perfect time, right when I needed him, and he needed a place to work and learn. And that was such an awesome connection. But like you said, just speaking further on the stereotypical yogi, it's like, that's why people get intimidated or they feel turned off to not taking that first step of just even walking into the studio and inquiring. Cause it's like, oh, la-di-da, the birds, the flowers, hippy dippy. And luckily I've been shown over the years, like, no, you can be a real person and who's like going to work and having a very serious job, but also there's room for this time to stop and slow down and pause.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of our teachers too are so unique in their own way of what they bring to the table. Of some of them are more in that spiritual, philosophical mindset, and that's what they offer. Some of them are hardcore. I'm going to kick your butt, and you're going to feel it in all these different parts of the body. And then there's the fusion of the two, where you get a little bit of both, and there's something for everybody. And not every single teacher is going to be who you jive with the most. And as instructors, we understand and are not offended by that. It's like, if you have someone or instructor that you connect with and you get the most out of whatever you're looking for from this person, beautiful. I'm just happy that you're coming. If you want to branch out and try some other new ways of experiencing this similar thing that we're all trying to get the same kind of point across, great. When you're ready for that, you explore. But there's something really incredible about trying to like understand that and knowing that it's not just what the stereotypical yoga person is. There's so much more, and there's something that every single person, I truly believe this, on planet Earth can benefit from if they just commit to doing it a few times, even more than once. Try it more than once, because you're going to get something new every time. But it's so expansive. There's a reason why this practice has been around for thousands and it's probably the thing that's been going on the longest out of anything that I can think of. It has such history and such a future where, like I said, you can do this until the day you die, whether you're just sitting in your chair, breathing. Maybe you're sitting and you did it when you went on your vacation and you don't have a yoga teacher training, but you were able to take what you've learned and execute it in your own way that felt good in your own body. And like, how awesome is that? That all you need is your own self. You don't need anything extra to get something from it. It's just you. It all comes from within you, which is another huge lesson, and something that we try to reiterate is like, you have the control. You are your own superpower. Like, and when you can start to understand that about yourself, it's like you can do anything.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I'm going to leave it there because we're up on time, but we're going to bring you back because we could talk for days and days and days, but really give really good information. But thank you so much for joining your next stop. And again, you mean the absolute world to me. And I'm just so proud to have seen all that you've done and cannot wait to meet your little one soon.
Yay. So soon. 4 more weeks.
Soon. Gosh, it's amazing. So you guys know what to do. Like, rate, review, and share. I always say this, but share, because you don't know who needs to hear this. You don't know who right now in their life is a little bit maybe stuck, a little bit like looking for something. And they might say, you know what, I've been wanting to do yoga. I'm just going to bite the bullet. it's what I did. I was like, I haven't done it. I really don't know what I'm doing. I don't know the names. I can't say the names, but I'm going to do it and I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to give myself, I think I did 2 weeks. I was like, I'm going to do 2 weeks and then see where it goes. I was going to buy the month after the first day. And I was like, wait, stop, just do the 2 weeks and then see where it goes. But that's what I want for you guys. So don't forget to like, rate, review, and share. And thank you again for joining Your Next Step.